Right, if you just joined us or you're still with us, this is still Enterprise Morning, reaching you from Enterprise Television. Let's get to our main conversation for today. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has dismantled a major syndicate involved in cryptocurrency, investment and romance scams, arresting 792 suspects in Lagos during a raid on the Big Leaf building, Victoria Island.
Among the arrested were 193 foreign nationals, including 148 Chinese, 40 Filipinos, and individuals from Pakistan, Indonesia, and Kazakhstan.
EFCC Director of Public Affairs Wilson Wajari stated that the operation followed extensive surveillance and intelligence gathering. The syndicate operated from a building resembling a corporate headquarters where Nigerian recruits were trained in impersonation techniques to target victims across the U.S., Canada, Mexico, and Europe.
And using platforms like WhatsApp and Telegram, they lured victims into fraudulent investments on www.yoto.com, charging activation fees of $35. The recruits, unaware of the scheme's full scope, were paid in cash or through informal channels while foreign syndicate leaders completed the fraud.
Recovered items include computers, phones, laptops, and vehicles. The EFCC has obtained suspects' statements, screened their devices with plans to prosecute them soon.
Wajari emphasized the international nature of the crime and collaboration with foreign partners to ensure justice, debunking the misconception that Nigerians solely perpetuate this scam.
Very well said. Now let's have our conversation. And still with us is Mr. Dotun Oladipo. He is the publisher of the Eagle Online. Thank you so very much, Mr. Oladipo, for hanging on.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. We truly do appreciate you. I think this is worthy enough to give a round of applause to EFCC for doing an awesome job. But at the same time, I'd love to ask you, Mr. Oladipo, when it comes to the average Nigerians, the EFCC seems to roar. They seem to be on their game. They understand the rules of engagement. But when it comes to the elite of the elite, they become numb. They become like the dog that cannot bite but can bark. So is it good enough to say, okay, they are trying when it comes to a certain class of people, but when it comes to another class, they remain numb?
Well, I won't say they are numb. Two things I'll say on that. Number one, when you look at the staggering amounts involved in these scams, 419, romance scam, dating scam, it's a lot. Go back over the years. They run into billions yearly. So, meaning that it is not only the man who goes to take 10 billion, 20 billion from government that is a danger to our economy and investments. Even all of these things happening. I get a lot of calls on this. People from this, how can you help me? Can you give me the right number? They've just scammed me from Nigeria. I refer them to EFCC. So how do such people come into Nigeria to invest? It's a big problem, because when you hear all of these things over and over and over again, nobody will trust the country. Number two, for the big, so-called big time fraud committed in the country
by politicians, I think it's very important we mention it.
Who are in power.
Yes, exactly.
By those who are in power. Two things have made these things difficult. Number one, the slow pace of justice in this country. Some cases have been on for 10, 12 years now with some ex-governors. So you wonder what has happened. Why will you say you have a thief and then you go to court? You can't prove your case. Like we say around this area, when you catch a man by his elbow, you can wriggle out. But when you have him here, and sometimes they blame those of us who point their attention or in the direction of other cases in other countries. When they take Nigerians, without, let's mention some names, Hush Puppy.
Yes, please.
The man who Forbes declared as the youngest and most successful person worldwide is there in the US, in prison. They didn't hold them here. They had them here. So that when they got into court, the only thing they could do was plead guilty.
Yeah.
So if you rush into arresting without first doing due diligence, what you have done is to provide a way of escape for that person. That's one part. And what I'm going to say next is going to affect this case too. We have lawyers in this country, including senior advocates of Nigeria, who jump into these cases.
So when you say jump, what do you mean now?
Jump in the sense that somebody has been accused of this, and this. You get your brief. There is no law that compels you to handle that case. No law compels you as a lawyer to handle a case that you don't want to handle. But what they do is they accept this brief because there is money. Okay, sir. Look at what happened yesterday at the Supreme Court. A case already decided. Somebody went back to the Supreme Court to again challenge it.
True.
And the man was fined. Why? Because who was the lawyer that took that case back? That lawyer should have, I'm sorry, maybe derobed completely.
But don't you think the reason that is different possibly is because Tinubu was involved in that particular case? If it was someone else, would you think it would have gone the same way?
It would have gone the same way.
Okay.
And I'm telling you this, go and check the history of Supreme Court. Once you take a case back to them, which has been decided, that's how they rule. Afe Babalola fell foul too. It's not just an unknown, it's not just unknown quantities that have done this before. So when you have situations like that where lawyers are willing to jump into the fray just because money is involved, there is always going to be a problem. We still have the case of Pompa waiting in court.
Yes.
He's not a politician, but look at his own case. Some people are handling it for him. I'm not saying he's guilty,
Of course.
but we are saying from even the way he has behaved during the trial, going again to when your international passport is with the government,
And you go
went
to travel.
behind to procure another one to travel.
Okay, Mr. Dotun, now
That's criminal enough.
sorry, Mr. Dotun, let's get back into this particular story. And I want to read out something because you actually made a statement.
All right.
Now, the EFCC said they raided this particular building at VI after months of surveillance and intelligence gathered on the syndicate's activities. Now, if we are to go and look into this particular story, they recruit young Nigerians, train them for months, and then they take it up. How do these people get in? Because definitely a business is supposed to be registered. There's after registration, and looking at where this particular office is situated, it is not in an underdeveloped place.
Hidden place, no, it's not.
It is in the heart of Lagos, VI, and they took a 7-story building. At this point, who is to be held responsible?
When you watch some of the best trailers that we've seen worldwide, you see that criminals, they take their crime right into where you will not suspect anything is happening. That's what they do. A big building, so you expect that everything will run normally. You recollect that before now, some people were also arrested in Abuja.
Sure.
And it wasn't anywhere hidden also. In fact, those ones, and I'm sure if you look into this also, they had police protection. There were policemen moving around with them. Though the IG eventually came out to say those who were arrested in Abuja, those providing security for them were doing illegal duty.
Suddenly.
But how do you have men under you that you can't account for? It's surprising, because that's, for me, is also indicting. You can't have men under you, and you cannot have somebody you are going to hold responsible, whether it is the area commander or the DPO. So it means every day they wake up, they go to those people, they say, an illegal duty, you called it.
And sorry to also add to this, he said, because the EFCC office is not quite far from this particular building in VI. We have about 2 EFCC offices within VI.
I agree with you. And that's the point about people being smart. You make your business look legal, but you are doing something illegal. We've complained so many times about how people come into this country and overstay their visa. They don't leave. But the system can track them.
Aside from the system tracking them, because sorry to cut you short, I've worked with an international organization, and most times when these immigration officers come to checkmate them, they are most times settled and they let go. Are we going to say, aside from the system, we're not having data? What of those who are occupying this position that are supposed to do the job?
It's also a part of that problem. Because when you have people who can be easily bought over, it's a problem. And that's why, for me, I'm an advocate of, one, proper training of those you are going to put into our security agencies. A lot of people who join those services now, they do so despite what they know is a poor salary, believing that they can earn a living doing all of those kind of things to augment whatever they are earning. We should stop it. We should screen. We should pay well. In a way that temptation can be far from them. There are people who ordinarily are so-called thieves. That's the only thing that they like. No matter how much they have, they still want more. Illegitimately. So it's also a problem because some of these guys know. In fact, some provide them with information. They are coming to check you today.
Okay.
Don't go near the office or clear your table. Do this. They provide them with information. Insiders. Look at when our troops ran into an ambush in Borno State. It was insiders that provided the opposition, the Boko Haram, with that information. So we will always have this kind of situation where we have the bad eggs. There is nothing you can do about it until we sanitize the system. There is very little we can do. So if they are in VI and they did this, imagine what will happen in other places. It means we are going to have a lot more to contend with. We have to start working on how these people come into Nigeria. Just like they work on us. What we've always had in the past is like only Nigerians commit crime abroad. But they do so here too. Foreigners do so here too. In fact, bigger than we do.
Okay, now we know that these foreigners do this. And my question now is, why do they walk with their shoulders so high and feel as though they don't? Because truth be told, if you are on the road, you are driving, and a white man is behind you, the police officer can even let him go faster than you. Because, in your own country.
Because they deal in dollars. Don't forget, they deal in dollar. You have your naira. Very weak. Devalued. So when a policeman sees a white man, or a foreigner, or let's limit it to policemen, all these security agencies, they see them, they give them more regard than you. Because they know if they put their hands in their pocket and $100 comes out, it's better than your 10,000 naira. Far better.
Yes, I think it's so very important and interesting that we're talking about this, especially as advocates of good governance here, ensuring that our country, move forward. But I would love to take this discussion, maybe something away from what we're talking about now, especially advocacy for good governance in our country. The leader
asked the former special advisor on media and publicity to the president. I said there are a lot of lofty programs. You are telling us about CNG buses. You are telling us about irrigation farming. But these are long-term projects you are talking about. what are Nigerians going to make use of now? Because the now is important. We mustn't die before we get to the promised land. What we are suffering today, we laid the foundation for it over 20 years ago. When we started, or we continued spending like we didn't have a plan for the future.
And you feel Bola Ahmed Tinubu was it a catalyst that made it worse?
If you say catalyst that made it worse, I will agree. Because certain things ought to have been put in place before some of the pronouncements that came. Perhaps he underestimated the situation he met on ground. Because for me, if I were Mr. President, especially when everybody around me disagreed with me, I would not have removed fuel subsidy on my first day in office. In fact, it was not in office yet. It was still at the, he didn't even get
at the ground of...
So, if I were him, I wouldn't do that. If I was the one, perhaps I wouldn't have allowed the Naira to go the way it did. Because you really, really have to understand that at the time he came in, Nigeria needed a big surgery. But that surgery does not mean that we must cut the pipe that supplies the blood.
Okay, now, if you're saying at the time he came in, Nigeria needs a big surgery, at this point now, are we going to say the president have the right surgeons with him to carry out the surgery for Nigeria?
I still don't see that.
Okay.
I still don't see that. Because some of us, when that cabinet reshuffle was done, we expected more. Because a lot of things seem not to be in place. The things that can act as catalysts to ensure that some of these pronouncements, some of these legislations work. For instance, power. Let us assume you even enjoy, for instance, in this studio, this station, 24 hours power supply. Then what I'm looking at is that you are going to be spending about 500, 700,000 in a month on power. If you are not fortunate to have 24 hours supply, think of diesel. So those were not the things for me that should come first. Look at the issue of the refineries. 2 days ago, I went to an NNPC filling station and I came back teasing my wife. I said, NNPC has reduced cost of petrol per liter. She said, so what is it? I said, they removed 10 naira. She just looked away and said, you this man. What is 10 naira to all we are saying? Because that is our reality. These things are actually on the high side for Nigerians. Moving around is difficult. And then the CNG buses, they are not things you pick off the shelf. I always say it, I find it strange that you take a train trip from Lagos to Ibadan and you are paying 3,600. When the buses are still offering me 2,000, 2,005. And then the train is not taking me to the exact station where I want to go, I still have to come out with about another 1,000 or 2,000. It doesn't make sense. These things are not adding up. And until when we get to a point where some of these key ministers, power, transport, agriculture, water resources, when they get it right, mining, in that area where
and security
seemingly making progress. Until when they get it right, we can't be out of this.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dotson.
You know?
Thank you, sir.
In fact, we can go on and on when it comes to issues of policies and how they are handled and how they should be done and who is in place to make it happen. We can go on and on and on, but that's just about the time we have for this particular segment. Just to let you know that Mr. Dotun Oladipo will be here to take us on our main conversation. Please don't go anywhere.
Yeah, when we return, EFCC smashes international crypto scam ring, arrests 792 in Lagos. We'll be right back to discuss this particular story. To stay with us.
Right.